There is a lie that almost every person believes throughout their entire life. They believe it because it is comfortable, because it protects the ego, because it creates the illusion that they have more control than they actually do. Most people believe that manipulation only happens when someone consciously tries to deceive them. They imagine a manipulator as someone calculated, someone who lies, controls, and influences others in an obvious way. But the truth is far more uncomfortable than that. The most powerful forms of manipulation rarely come from the outside. They happen inside your own mind. And perhaps this is the reason so many people spend years believing they are making free decisions, when in reality they are only obeying invisible forces they were never taught to see. Think for a moment. How many choices in your life were truly yours? How many opinions did you form on your own? How many desires were genuinely born within you? And how many were implanted by social expectations, the need for acceptance, fear of rejection, or the search for approval? Most people never ask these questions, and precisely because of that, they remain vulnerable. Niccolo Machiavelli understood something few have the courage to admit. The greatest power does not belong to the one who controls others. It belongs to the one who cannot be controlled. But there is a problem. You cannot prevent someone from manipulating you until you understand what is already manipulating you internally. And this is where the real investigation begins. Because what makes a person almost impossible to manipulate is not physical strength, superior intelligence, or social status. It is awareness. An awareness so deep that it allows you to see psychological movements before they even take control. Most people live in reaction. They react to praise. They react to criticism. They react to opinions. They react to rejection. They react to fear. They react to approval. And while reacting, they believe they are choosing. But there is a huge difference between choosing and simply responding to stimuli. A person can spend decades believing they are leading their own life when, in reality, they are only being driven by unconscious emotions they never understood. Carl Jung observed something similar when he stated that what remains unconscious continues to direct our lives, and then we call it fate. Few sentences describe the human condition so accurately, because what you do not see within yourself does not disappear. What you ignore does not lose strength. What you reject does not cease to exist. On the contrary, everything that remains hidden continues to influence thoughts, decisions, relationships, and behaviors without you noticing. And this is exactly why some people seem to fall repeatedly into the same types of relationships, the same conflicts, the same frustrations, the same cycles of suffering. They believe they are facing different problems, but in reality, they are encountering the same pattern wearing different faces. And as long as this pattern remains invisible, manipulation continues to happen, not necessarily through others, but through the very psychological structure they are not aware of. Now imagine someone who learns to observe this. Someone who develops the ability to see their emotions without being controlled by them. Someone who notices their impulses before acting. Someone who can distinguish a genuine desire from a need created by fear. That person begins to become extremely difficult to manipulate, because manipulation always finds entry through blind spots. And the fewer blind spots you have, the less power the external world holds over you. But there is an even deeper question. Do you truly know yourself? Or do you only know the version of yourself that you learn to present to the world? This question may seem simple, but it carries one of the greatest revelations of human psychology, because much of what we call identity was built for social survival, built to be accepted, to belong, to avoid rejection, to receive love. And when this happens, we slowly begin to drift away from who we truly are. We build masks. We create characters. We develop behaviors that seem natural, but were often born only from the need to adapt. And the longer we live through these masks, the harder it becomes to distinguish who we are from what we learn to perform. Perhaps this is exactly why so many people feel lost, even when they apparently have everything they once desired. Because achieving goals does not solve the problem of an identity disconnected from itself. And as long as this disconnection exists, there will always be space for influence, manipulation, and control. This is why people who are never manipulated do not begin by studying others. They begin by studying themselves. They understand that the real battlefield is not in the external world. It is inside the mind itself. Because before there is anyone trying to control you, there are emotions trying to control you. There are fears trying to control you. There are wounds trying to control you. There are desires trying to control you. And as long as these forces remain invisible, you will continue to believe you are choosing, when in reality you are only reacting. But when awareness begins to illuminate these hidden regions of the mind, something extraordinary happens. You stop being automatically driven. You begin to observe. You begin to understand. You begin to see. And it is exactly at this point that a form of freedom is born that very few people experience in their entire lives. But to reach it, we first need to look at what most people avoid. We need to enter the territory of the shadow, because that is where the deepest mechanisms of manipulation find their true power. There is a reason why most people are unable to protect themselves from manipulation. And that reason is not a lack of intelligence, experience, or knowledge. It lies in something far deeper, something that remains hidden from consciousness for most of a person's life. Carl Jung's shadow called this the shadow. The shadow is not a monster hidden inside the mind. It is made of everything you have rejected within yourself over the years. Emotions you considered inappropriate, desires you judged unacceptable, impulses you try to hide, fears you pretended not to have, entire aspects of your personality pushed away because they did not fit the image you wanted to build of yourself. But there is a problem that few people realize. What is rejected does not disappear. What is repressed does not die. What is ignored does not lose strength. In fact, the opposite happens. The less awareness you have of a certain part of yourself, the greater its influence tends to be over your life. That is why many people believe they are making rational decisions when, in reality, they are obeying unconscious impulses they have never questioned. Notice how often someone repeatedly enters relationships that hurt them. How often they return to situations they promised themselves they would never experience again. How often they overreact to small provocations. On the surface, everything seems to make sense. But beneath these reactions, something deeper is operating silently. There is a part of the psyche trying to be recognized, and as long as it remains invisible, it continues to control behavior without resistance. External manipulation almost always finds space where an internal conflict already exists. This means that no one can easily control you unless they find within you some unresolved need. The need for approval, the need for belonging, the need for validation, the need to be admired, the need to feel important. These needs are not human defects. Everyone has them to some degree. The danger begins when they remain unconscious, because what you do not know about yourself can be used against you. A person who desperately needs approval can be manipulated through praise. A person dominated by fear of rejection can be controlled through the threat of abandonment. A person driven by the need for status may sacrifice their own principles to preserve an image. And the most interesting part is that, in most cases, these people do not realize what is happening. They believe they are acting of their own free will, but their choices were already influenced long before the decision was made. This is exactly where depth psychology meets the strategic thinking described by Niccolo Machiavelli. Because true power is not only about understanding others, it is about understanding what others do not know about themselves. And the first person who must be understood is you. Perhaps you have already noticed something strange happening in your own life. Certain people trigger extremely intense emotions within you. Some provoke instant admiration. Others provoke immediate irritation. Some even awaken envy, fascination, or rejection without any clear reason. But do these emotions truly belong to the person you are observing? Or do they reveal something about you? Carl Jung projection believed that what bothers us most in others often points to unresolved contents within ourselves. When a trait in someone else triggers an exaggerated emotional reaction, we are often witnessing a projection. The mind transfers to the external world what it cannot recognize internally. And this is precisely why so many people spend their entire lives fighting external versions of their internal conflicts. They believe they are facing enemies, but in reality, they are often confronting forgotten parts of themselves. This is one of the most sophisticated traps of the human mind, because while you are busy observing the behavior of others, you fail to notice what is happening inside you. And when that happens, your freedom decreases. You become predictable. You become reactive. You become vulnerable. All manipulation depends on predictability. If someone can predict your emotions, they can predict your decisions. If they can predict your decisions, they can influence your movements. And if they can influence your movements, they already hold a degree of control over you. People who are rarely manipulated share one trait in common. They observe their own reactions with the same attention they give to the external world. They do not automatically assume they are right. They do not blindly believe every thought that arises. They do not confuse emotion with truth. And precisely because of that, they develop something extremely rare: psychological distance, a space between impulse and action, between emotion and response, between thought and decision. It is within this space that consciousness begins to emerge. And the larger this space becomes, the less influence external forces can exert. But this journey has only just begun, because recognizing the shadow does not mean integrating it. Noticing internal conflicts does not mean resolving them. There is still another equally powerful psychological structure that must be understood, a structure that shapes the way you present yourself to the world. A mask so well constructed that many people spend their entire lives believing it is their true identity. And this is where the persona begins. If the shadow represents everything that has been hidden from consciousness, the persona represents everything we choose to show to the world. And perhaps no psychological structure is as necessary, and at the same time as dangerous, as this one. From the earliest years of life, we learn that certain behaviors are rewarded while others are rejected. We learn which emotions can be expressed, which opinions must be hidden, and which behaviors increase our chances of being accepted. Little by little, we begin to construct a socially acceptable version of ourselves. This version is the persona. It functions as a psychological mask, not necessarily a lie, but an adaptation, a tool created to navigate the demands of social life. The problem begins when we forget that it is only a tool, because there is a huge difference between wearing a mask and believing you are the mask. And this is exactly where many people lose themselves. They spend so many years trying to meet the expectations of others that they stop noticing their own needs. They spend so much time playing a role that they no longer know who they are when no one is watching. Think about how many decisions are made not from genuine desire, but from the need for approval. How many careers are chosen to impress others? How many relationships are maintained out of fear of loneliness? How many opinions are repeated simply to avoid rejection? On the surface, everything seems normal, but underneath, there is a silent tension, a constant struggle between what the person truly feels and what they believe they should feel. And the greater this distance becomes, the harder it is to live authentically. Niccolo Machiavelli deeply understood the importance of appearances. He knew that the world rarely judges intentions. The world judges images. It judges perceptions. It judges what it can see. But there is an important difference between understanding the power of appearance and becoming a prisoner of it. Many people spend their entire lives trying to protect an identity built to impress others. And the more energy they invest in this construction, the more dependent they become on external approval. This dependency creates an invisible vulnerability, because anyone who controls your need for approval holds some degree of influence over you. If someone can determine how you feel about yourself, that person already occupies a position of power in your mind. This is why individuals who are difficult to manipulate usually have a different relationship with their own identity. They do not constantly need to defend an image. They do not need to prove their worth in every conversation. They do not need to win every argument. They do not need to convince the world of who they are, because their identity does not fully depend on the gaze of others. While most people seek validation, they seek clarity. While most people try to appear strong, they try to understand their own weaknesses. While most people build characters, they try to meet the person hidden behind the character. This difference changes everything, because when the persona fully dominates consciousness, life becomes a permanent performance. A person begins to monitor every word, every behavior, every reaction, not to understand themselves, but to protect the image they have created. And this creates a deep psychological exhaustion, a difficult-to-explain emptiness, a feeling that something is missing, even when everything appears to be working. Perhaps you have already met someone like this. People admired by everyone, yet deeply disconnected from themselves. People who seem successful in every area of life, but carry a silent inner restlessness that no one notices. This happens because the human soul is not satisfied by social acceptance alone. It seeks something deeper. It seeks coherence. It seeks integration. It seeks truth. And the further the persona moves away from what truly exists within the psyche, the greater the internal conflict becomes. The most curious part is that this conflict often does not appear in an obvious way. It emerges as anxiety, as a sense of emptiness, as a constant need for distraction, as an inability to remain alone for long periods of time. Because when silence arrives, the person begins to notice the distance between who they are and who they are pretending to be. And not everyone is prepared to face this perception. But those who manage to go through this discomfort discover something transformative. They realize that they do not need to destroy the persona. They only need to stop fully identifying with it. The persona remains useful. It remains necessary. We all need to play social roles at certain moments. The problem was never the existence of the mask. The problem has always been forgetting who is behind it. People who are rarely manipulated understand this intuitively. They know how to adapt their image to context without losing contact with their essence. They know how to navigate the world without selling their identity. They know how to use appearance without becoming enslaved by it. And this freedom produces something extremely powerful. Authenticity. Not the superficial authenticity of saying everything you think, but a deeper authenticity. The ability to remain connected to yourself even when the world tries to define who you should be. At this point, external influence begins to lose strength. Because you no longer depend so heavily on others' opinions to know who you are. You no longer desperately need approval to feel valuable. You no longer hand your identity over to others. But there is an even deeper step. Recognizing the shadow and understanding the persona are only parts of the process. True transformation happens when these parts stop fighting each other and begin to be integrated within a broader consciousness. And it is exactly at this moment that a form of power is born that does not depend on manipulation, status, or external control. A power that emerges when you finally begin to govern yourself. There comes a moment in the psychological journey when the question stops being, who is influencing me? And becomes, what within me can still be influenced? This shift may seem subtle, but it completely transforms the way a person sees themselves and the world. Up to this point, you have seen that the shadow operates behind the scenes of the mind, and that the persona often takes control of identity. But understanding these structures is not enough. Knowledge alone does not create transformation. Many people spend years studying psychology, philosophy, or human behavior and remain trapped in the same patterns. They continue reacting to the same triggers. They continue repeating the same cycles. True change begins when observation becomes practical awareness. It is here that Carl Jung introduced one of the deepest ideas in all of psychology, individuation. Individuation does not mean becoming perfect. It does not mean eliminating flaws, conquering every fear, or reaching a state of permanent enlightenment. It means something far more human. It means becoming whole. Because the greatest problem for most people is not that they have internal conflicts. It is that they are divided against themselves. One part seeks security. Another seeks freedom. One part wants approval. Another longs for authenticity. One part wants to be accepted. Another wants to express its truth. And while these forces remain at war, psychological energy is consumed in invisible battles. Perhaps this is why so many people feel exhausted without fully understanding why. They are not tired only because of the world. They are tired because of the constant struggle taking place within them. Integration begins when you stop trying to eliminate parts of yourself and start trying to understand them. This does not mean accepting every impulse blindly. It does not mean excusing weaknesses or abandoning personal responsibility. It means recognizing that everything that exists within you carries a message, even uncomfortable emotions, even old fears, even deep insecurities. When an emotion arises, most people react automatically. Some try to suppress it. Others become slaves to it. Very few do something different. Very few observe. And it is precisely within that observation that a new kind of freedom is born. Imagine someone who feels anger. Normally, that person sees only two options: explode or repress. But there is a third possibility: to observe, to ask what that emotion is trying to reveal. What boundary has been crossed? What need has gone unrecognized? What wound is still active? When this happens, the emotion ceases to be a force that controls and becomes a source of information. The same is true of fear. The same is true of sadness. The same is true of insecurity. Emotions stop being enemies. They become messengers. And the more you learn to listen to them without becoming their prisoner, the harder it becomes to manipulate you. Because manipulation depends on automatic reactions. It depends on unconscious impulses. It depends on emotions taking control before awareness has time to intervene. But when there is a space between emotion and response, something extraordinary happens. You begin to choose, perhaps for the first time in a truly genuine way. It is exactly here that a form of power emerges that Machiavelli would have deeply admired. Not the power to control crowds, not the power to dominate opponents, but the power to govern yourself. Most people believe strength means controlling external circumstances. Yet circumstances change. People change. Opportunities change. The only territory that remains constantly under your responsibility is your own mind. And whoever cannot govern that territory will rarely govern anything else. This understanding completely changes your relationship with life. Failures stop being mere defeats. They become information. Conflicts stop being mere problems. They become opportunities for understanding. Even suffering begins to occupy a different place, not as something desirable, but as something capable of revealing aspects of the psyche that were previously hidden. Little by little, identity begins to reorganize itself. The desperate need for approval loses its intensity. The constant fear of rejection begins to weaken. Emotional dependency starts to fade. You begin finding within yourself what you once searched for compulsively in others. And this creates a rare kind of stability. A stability that does not depend entirely on circumstances. A stability that does not disappear every time someone criticizes you. A stability that does not collapse when expectations are disappointed. This is one of the most remarkable characteristics of people who are rarely manipulated. They have developed an inner center, not because they are cold, not because they are superior, but because they have learned to remain conscious even in the midst of chaos. While many are dragged around by every emotion, they observe. While many react impulsively, they reflect. While many search for answers outside themselves, they begin by investigating within. And it is exactly this capacity that creates a different kind of presence. A quieter presence, a steadier presence, a presence that is far more difficult to influence. But there is still one final understanding. An understanding that brings together everything we have explored so far. Because recognizing the shadow, understanding the persona, and beginning the process of inner integration do not represent the end of the journey. They represent only the beginning of a new way of existing. A way in which freedom stops being an abstract idea and starts becoming a lived experience. And that is exactly what we will explore in the conclusion of this journey. By reaching this point, you may have realized that the real question was never about discovering secret techniques to avoid manipulators. It was never about learning psychological tricks to win arguments or dominate people. What was truly being revealed throughout this journey was something far deeper. The greatest human vulnerability does not exist in other people. It exists in what remains invisible within ourselves. Because no one can easily control a person who understands their own fears. No one can manipulate someone who recognizes their own wounds. No one can direct a mind that has learned to observe its impulses before obeying them. That is the fundamental difference. Most people spend their lives trying to change the world around them. Very few dedicate enough time to understanding the world that exists within them. And perhaps that is exactly why so many surrender their power without realizing it. They surrender their power when they allow the approval of others to determine their value. They surrender their power when the fear of rejection controls their decisions. They surrender their power when they confuse temporary emotions with permanent truths. They surrender their power when they live through masks that no longer represent who they truly are. But now you understand something different. You understand that freedom does not emerge when all threats disappear. It emerges when you develop enough awareness to avoid being automatically controlled by them. Because true power was never about controlling people. It was about no longer needing to be controlled. It was about building a mind capable of remaining clear while everyone around you is reacting. It was about seeing what most people ignore. It was about developing such an honest relationship with yourself that the most common forms of manipulation simply lose their power. The shadow will continue to exist. The persona will continue to exist. Internal conflicts will continue to arise. You will still experience fear, doubt, insecurity, and uncertainty at certain moments. But now there is a difference. You no longer need to be ruled by those forces. You can observe them, understand them, integrate them, and then consciously choose how to respond. Perhaps this is the rarest form of freedom a human being can achieve. The freedom of not being a slave to one's own unconscious mind. Because while you cannot see, you react. While you do not understand, you repeat. While you do not observe, you are led. But the moment awareness illuminates what was hidden, a new path begins to emerge. A path less driven by impulse, less driven by fear, less driven by the constant need for validation, and more driven by clarity, more driven by presence, more driven by self-knowledge. Carl Jung believed that the greatest adventure of life is becoming who you truly are. And perhaps that is the most important reflection of all. The question is not who is trying to manipulate you. The question is how much of yourself still remains unknown. Because what you know can be transformed. What you understand can be integrated. But what remains hidden will continue to exert power over your life. If this video helped you see the human mind from a different perspective, leave a like and subscribe to the channel to continue exploring the deepest territories of psychology, philosophy, and human nature. And I want you to participate in this reflection. Write in the comments, "I choose to see before I react." Because every true transformation begins when awareness replaces automation. And remember something that very few people will ever fully understand. The most dangerous moment for any form of manipulation is the moment you finally begin to see yourself with absolute clarity.